I know Kung Fu.
Show me.
You are the new student. Come closer.
You're listening to the Kung Fu Podcast presented by James Still.
I don't care if it's Muhammad, Imard, Bruce Lee.
And Steve Newby.
This is the original 5 Fingers of Death right here.
But my hands are registered as lethal weapons. That means we get into a fight, I accidentally kill you, I go to jail.
I don't like saying things at the beginning because, and then you record it all.
Well, it's like easing into it. You see, it's like easing into it.
Right, okay.
Right then, okay. So we're on podcast 9 of the Kung Fu Podcast. Welcome everybody. My name's James Still, and I'm joined with my teacher, Mr. Steve Newby, all the way from Canada. He's sat in a rocking chair right now. Hi, Steve. How you doing?
Rocking chair, and the time is 8:26 in the morning.
Oh, are you raring to go?
Your clocks go back tomorrow, don't they? So I'll be 8 hours behind you again.
Yeah.
Right now I'm 7 hours behind you.
Yes. No, that's it. What have you been up to since I last spoke to you?
What, you mean like last night?
No, it's not. It wasn't.
Yeah. Oh, I just I watched this really awful film last night. You know, one of these space things where they're stuck in space and the aircraft's falling apart.
All right. Anyway,
so
on that note, thanks for that. Right, so we better talk about something martial arts. Obviously, still in lockdown here in the UK, and my wife Sarah is getting fed up because I keep using her to practice on. I keep saying, "Grab me here." I said, "Throw a punch here," and she's just like, "No, I don't want to." I said,
Why does she want to grab your ear?
Oh, very funny, very funny. No, she's getting cheesed off with it. I don't know. So I did that for a bit, and then I went back on YouTube and watched some stuff because there's not much else to do really.
Yeah.
But
because of the time, I'm trying to be quiet. Oh, right, okay.
Oh, right.
Yeah, this is my wife.
She's not happy that you're up this early. She's trying to get to sleep.
I think she can hear me talking, even though I'm talking like it's, American houses.
Yeah.
They're like made of paper. I'm sure they are.
Oh, brilliant!
I'll tell people that I work with. I go, the last house I had 2 foot thick walls, and they goes, "What was it, a castle?" It's just a cottage.
Oh my God!
So,
oh God!
It's quite amazing because the walls here, obviously, they're kind of either plastic cladding or wooden cladding on the outside, and some boarding on the inside, and that's your lot.
Yeah. Honest to God. Right, so guess what I was watching on YouTube last night? I found the Masters of Combat, the BBC TV show back from like 2000, year 2000 something, with the Lau Gar Death Squad on.
Yeah, who won, by the way?
Lau Gar Death Squad.
Yeah.
It was quite fun, that show, wasn't it? It was funny. But you had Sean Vieira, Sharon Gill, Jason Crabtree on it. And they had to do like all these little tests, like run across poles and punch bags and fire arrows, and then a bit of fighting. Although they didn't really focus on that much, but You know,
There's lots of tests, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Made up tests.
yeah, it was
Yeah.
quite good actually. It was quite fun.
Yeah.
But certainly of its time. But
Yeah, Sharon did really well. She
yeah.
she was beating all the guys in the sparring.
Oh, she was great. They called her Pocket Rocket.
Yeah.
And they used to before the start of every event, they used to all put their fists together, do a massive fist bump, and say "Lau Fist." Oh, it was great. Yeah, no, really cool, really good. That I was like, oh, I'm glad I found that. So yeah, just type in if you want to find that. It's something like Masters of Combat Final or something. You know, on YouTube. Yeah, no, it was really cool. It was really good. That. Yeah, enjoyed that. So, what else have I been watching? Well, do you know what I meant to ask you about? Have you ever watched? Presumably you've seen Master Wong. You know the angry Chinese bloke. You know, from the UK. You know, it's like.
Oh yeah.
What do you think of him? What's your opinion on him?
Well, he's intense.
You think? Jesus.
I think he loves what he does, and I think he's desperately trying to make a point that, you know, traditional kung fu is a valid, you know, fighting art, which it is, and I think he does a good job in sort of describing that and explaining that. But I think a lot of his kind of aggression and so on kind of goes a long way to convincing people.
Yeah.
Because no matter what you did, if you was like a pub fighter and you just went in a pub and you was aggressive like that, people would say, "Oh, you know, he's hard," and that's how people would react. So, but obviously he knows his stuff. He's
no, totally knows. I like the message. It's just the delivery that I find a bit. Oh God, you know.
He can be irritating.
Yeah.
When
he's an angry little Wong, isn't he? You know? But you know, all right, Dave. I just grab him by the balls, Dave. Give him a twist, Dave. You know what I mean? I'm like, it's like, yeah, I like that. But he was in some sort of expedition in the UK somewhere, big martial arts expo, and people were coming up to him asking him questions, and like he was going. Some guy said to him, you know, when you do Chi Sao, you know, because he's a Wing Chun guy, isn't he? You know, when you do Chi Sao, you know, can you show me this, that, and the other? He's like, I don't want to do Chi Sao with you here because you're going to be tense, I'm going to be tense. And, you know, you just want to hit him, you know, and stuff like that. So he's like, he's very sort of, he tries to keep it real, so to speak.
Yeah, tries to keep it violent.
Yeah, totally. So, it's interesting to watch, you know. I don't mind him, although, you know, too much of him is too...
It's a take on martial arts, isn't it? It's like, I'll do it like this because this is going to work, kind of thing. And he's right. You do it. Obviously, you have to be aggressive when you do it, but you don't have to be aggressive when you teach it.
Yes, that is true. Yeah, I think that's sort of like it's what a lot of these. We discussed it before. Like what a lot of these reality-based people do is they want to sort of bring out the aggression, you know. So they'll talk to you and they'll swear to you and they'll be in your face and just effing and jeffing this and all the rest of it. It's just like man.
Or you have the people that do courses for you, or you kind of admire from afar or something, and then you start training with them, and like if you've left an association, we were talking about someone last week left an association, left me, and he joined this guy, and of course all this guy does is knock him out.
Yeah. Oh shit.
So he uses him as cannon fodder, knocks him out, and my take on this kind of thing is, you know, wait a minute, you joined so you could build up your own reputation, or so that you could be recognised by a new kind of, you know, so-called master, if you want. And then all you're doing is just getting beaten up by him. And what really kind of gets me is they let him beat them up. They let them. And what?
Yeah, but in their defence, have they not just got to? He's obviously got to be seen to be doing the technique.
It doesn't have to actually knock them out to do the technique. It's
but
just,
you know how YouTube is. It's a fickle world. If people aren't, if you're not knocking people out and saying, "Oh, this works," people are going to think, "Oh, you're full of it." And
well, my attitude. My attitude is okay. You can prove that you can knock him out. Now let's see if you can do it. If you got a really good defensive student who doesn't want to be knocked out, or doesn't want to be grabbed, or doesn't want to be locked. Yeah. Let's see what happens then.
Yeah, I know what you mean. But you've got to. I'm not suggesting you've got to, Steve. Obviously, you're the teacher. But I'm just suggesting that maybe you've got to cut some people some slack in terms of how they've got to present their case.
How many times do they have to knock someone out?
You
present their case?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah,
in my view, it's a dangerous practice.
Well, imagine if you had an underlying health condition.
Exactly, that's my point. You want to hurt someone like that, they don't get up again. Yeah. What kind of reputation are you going to give?
Yeah. Didn't you witness someone doing or by association and on someone, and they had an accident?
Well, no. The story is, my wife used to do jiu-jitsu,
right?
With a guy who, basically making it up as he goes along,
right?
And he wanted to demonstrate a naked choke with the class, so he used a 14-year-old boy, and He decided he was going to show people how to knock someone out. Mm-hmm. Of course, the boy possibly agreed at the time. Yeah. And he put him into a naked choke, tried to knock him out, tried to, render him unconscious by choking his neck. And of course, the boy started to struggle and panic, and he spewed, and his eyes went red and everything, and of course, his club fell apart. There was the parents sued, and that was the end of it. And that was the kind of club that my wife had joined.
Didn't she have what was that certificate?
It's Nippon Dai Budokai.
Right.
Was an organisation that kind of. We used to refer to it as the dustbin of martial arts, because you could go on a course. I mean, we'd go down, because they used to do the courses where we had our class, and we'd go down and watch them, and you'd always see someone coming out the woodwork, someone you knew from somewhere else, that had decided to jump on this bandwagon and get recognised. Of course, everybody and their grandmother is recognising people now. Yeah. It's a big thing, insurance and martial arts recognition organisations and so on. Yeah. But I saw a couple of people that, the one guy was a blue sash at Lau Gar. Right. Next thing I saw him, he was a black belt at Wing Chun, and he also said he's a black belt at Thai boxing. Well, Thai boxing don't do grades really, so not at that time. It was all about the traditional Thai boxing training, and and I met another guy there who was known as Master Mick.
Hey, he sounds legit straight away.
Yeah, well, I when I was. I think I was about a yellow sash, and I went to. I used to go, obviously, visit lots of clubs, and people would come from different clubs to our group as well, and say, "Oh, come and have a look at this." And there was a full-time group club, and I was invited to do the squad training on a Saturday morning, and so on. And I did some training with them, and met a couple of friends from school there too, actually, and they saw my yellow sash and thought it was only a second grade, and. Anyway,
of course, it's the 5th grade.
It's the 5th grade, yeah. So I did some fighting with the instructor that had invited me, who had been coming to our class. He was apparently a black sash, and there was a certificate on the wall, which had it basically just said Kung Fu black sash, right? and that was it. It just had a few, signatures and stuff like that. Now, a guy actually applied for one of those certificates and got one for his Alsatian dog. Right. So, needless to say, anyway, I did some sparring with this guy, and he was a really flexible guy. I forget his name now. He was a really nice guy and everything, but he kind of did all this very flamboyant, very low, stretchy stances and swinging his arms about like he'd seen on the movies,
Yeah.
And I was just sparring with him, and he went right low, and his leg was, right outstretched, and he was sat on his
like you see like the Tai Chi people go in like snake.
Yeah, like a
creeps
real
down.
stretch.
Yeah, like
that's
really
it,
low. Yeah.
Yeah, he was a really good stretcher, and but we were sparring, so all I did was stood on his leg.
And what did he do?
Yeah. Well, he couldn't get up, so he couldn't do anything.
Yeah. Oh, you've gone. Oh, you just went for a
put my
second.
foot on
Then you just went. Did your mic go down?
Did I?
Yeah, your mic
no.
went off. Oh no, it's all right then. It's all right. You're back now.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So he couldn't.
Anyway,
so
I
he
got
couldn't...
to fight with his instructor.
Oh, we're stopping. You're back. What happened then?
Sorry, you just lost me, didn't you?
Yeah, I did. Yeah. You just went. Were you halfway through a long-winded story?
Yeah. I paused to take a breath.
Oh, right.
Yeah. Okay. So, no. Anyway, going back to this guy, I stood on his leg, yes, and he couldn't move. But I did get to fight his master Mick, who I saw at this course later, learning the nunchucks.
Yeah.
And we did a little bit of sparring, and I jumped up. I did a jumping side kick, which is very unusual in a sparring situation, but there was loads of time because he was pretty useless. And I did a flying kick. I hit him in the chest with this flying kick.
Yeah.
And in the old days, you used to have these boxing matches because they smoked.
Yeah,
so they boxing matches, which were made of plywood. And I kicked his... I kicked his chest, and these matches, this box exploded, and all the matches went flying everywhere, all over the place. And as he was picking it up, he was going, "Oh, good kick, good kick." It was awful. He was an awful martial artist, but he was the master.
Yeah.
But the worst thing is, to top this story, is I met some girl at a party, started going out with her.
Yeah.
And a sister came round and sort of found out I did martial arts, and she says to her, "Oh yeah, but you wouldn't like to mess with Master Mick." And I thought straight away in my head, I went, "Oh God, I know him." She went, "Oh yeah, he was taught when he was like 3 years old, and he's been doing it ever since." And I thought, you know what? That's the way of the world.
Wow.
It's just. People are so naive, and that stuck with me.
On those certificates from Nippon Kai Budokai or whatever, didn't they have like, what discipline? And they had so many boxes like listing kung fu, karate,
yes.
whatever, and you just tick the box that you just took the grade in.
Taekwondo, karate, kung fu, jiu-jitsu, judo, kempo. Can't remember now. Jackie's had a signature, and it was just the box for jiu-jitsu was ticked.
Oh, brilliant!
So I just
special.
don't know how they managed to grade these people.
Yeah. Well, they must have.
But you get a lot of organisations. Well, the specific organisations, particularly teaching kickboxing, and the head likes to call himself. What is it?
Principal.
He's a principal. Yeah, he's a principal, but he doesn't actually know the syllabus. He just does the gradings.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Oh, Well, anyway,
but there are a lot of people like that.
Oh yeah. Oh, for real. I've when I went to that Taekwondo course not so long ago, and I just like you, I wanted to go and see what they were up to, and they were basically doing a course whereby they're analysing their patterns or katas or sets or whatever you want to call them, and trying to apply them into a street defence or a self-defence scenario. But of course there's so many. But anyway, walk in this hall, and I'm not kidding. Like every single person there, like bar one or something, was a black belt, right? And they all call themselves masters this, master that, and I think like the highest grade in there was something like an 8th dan or an 8th degree or whatever they call it. But every single one of them, like 3rd degree, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th being, this guy was taking the course. And so I'm sat on the side just listening to him, and it's hard when you've done something that I perceive, and I know is very technical. So my perception of martial arts are that way inclined, So I'm watching, I'm listening, and I'm trying to understand their points. And at one point he was doing he said, right, there is a point to this story, but at one point he was grabbing the wrist. So he says, right, okay, so if you're going to get out of this, okay, like if you just grab a hand, he says, right, to get out of this, I could move my arm away and my arm around, sort of, turn my body, make it anatomical and whatnot, but I'm not going to do that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to strike him. And I'm thinking, oh, okay, all right, I see what you're saying, right? Yeah, all right, you're going to strike him. And then he said, this master, he said, I'm going to strike him on the pressure point. And I'm like, what? And he turned around to the whole class, and they're all like sitting down watching this demonstration attentively. Says, but bear in mind, I'm not an expert when it comes to pressure points or DIMAC. I'm actually, and this is verbatim, by the way, I'm actually learning it from my mate. And as soon as I learn it, I will pass it on to you. And I'm there going, what the WTF, I'm thinking, you're like one of the top masters, if you like, in ITF Taekwondo in the West Midlands, and this is how you're running the course. I'm learning DIMAC from my mate. And I'm thinking, Jesus Christ. And these people were paying like a lot of money for this course. Luckily, I went in for free. I wasn't training. I was just looking on the side. But do you know what I mean, Steve? I'm just like, how the hell can you justify that?
Yeah, I know.
It's still, it's so prevalent. It really is. It's just
I think in teaching you have to be on. If you don't know something, say, I'm not sure about this. Don't teach it.
Yeah.
It's easier. Don't teach something that you don't know. But if people are paying money to, they want you to at least know what you're doing.
The best part was he's trying to demonstrate this pressure point strike. He hits the guy in sort of like the inside joint of the arm, and the guy doesn't let go. and so he does it again, hits him, and then pulls his arm back as if, oh, there you go, it worked. I'm just like, no. He let go. He was complying with you. I was like, okay, if Jesus Christ, it was embarrassing. But like, the bless them, because it's not this. I would never assume to blame the students, but if you grow up in that atmosphere, in that sort of environment, in terms of martial art, then you're never forced to ask questions and sort of argue a point. I mean, my favorite question from one of the Taekwondo black belts on that day was from a guy, and he put his hand up and he said, because they opened up the floor for questions at one point, he said, do you know, he said, I've been doing Taekwondo a while now, but I've got a question I want to ask you, Master such and such. We all know that Taekwondo, we like to do sort of high kicks, and you need a bit of flexibility, but I wear jeans most days and I can't lift my leg up that high. How am I meant to do these high kicks? And I'm thinking to myself, Jesus, man. And this guy is like, one of their black belts. And I'm just like, use your noggin. Yeah. It's sad. And I feel so sorry for them. I really do.
You learn very quickly when you're teaching, certainly in your early days of teaching, as I did, that when you demonstrate techniques, you've got to understand not only the intended escape method, but any alternative escape methods that you may have to use if the situation isn't going to your favour. Now, I'll give you an example. I was teaching a grab from behind. Someone grabbed me from behind. Now, this guy, he was a really nice guy. I worked with him. He was working at the same company.
Yeah.
But he was in the Foreign Legion. Now, he had been in the Foreign Legion some years and then had ran away, had left.
Oh, left
Right.
the Foreign Legion. So he ran away to join the Foreign Legion, then ran away from the Foreign Legion.
That's right.
All right, okay.
So this guy was a really meaty guy, you know, he was a really strong guy and so on.
Yeah.
And yes, he grabbed me from behind. And as I tried to make my escape, you know, pushing his arms up, whatever, it seemed impossible. So I just had to grab his groin. So I just grabbed his nut, and and that was basically an easier way of getting out. But you do, you know, when you say to someone, "This is how you escape," and then you can't escape, you have to go back. You have to make sure that you practice that over and over again, and don't practice things that don't work.
Don't work for you.
That don't work for, well, yes, don't work, period. I mean, yes, they'll work for a bigger guy than me, but if they don't work for me, they're not going to really work for a smaller person necessarily. Well, I'm talking about that particular technique.
Yeah.
But obviously, yes, lots of techniques that you teach don't necessarily suit you.
But you still have to teach them.
But you still have to maintain them, yes, because they will suit someone else, yes. But you
but
still have to know how to... You've got to teach them how to escape, and you've got to make sure they can escape from, you know, the person that you give them as a partner. You've got to test that technique by, I guess, testing the student. But of course, that student has got to be, you know, he's got to know a little bit. You can't just throw some big guy on a, you know, a brand new beginner young kid or girl and then expect them to be able to use it.
Yeah.
But often that happens, and you know, there are consequences to that kind of stupidity.
Yeah, it's interesting. Talking about sort of grabs and joint locks and whatnot, what would you? I mean, I think the way I sort of perceive Lau for myself is because of my size stature, I'm like a hitter, you know. I just want to hit, punch, you know, whatnot. Now, it's not that I don't appreciate joint locks and manipulations, or china or kumla, or however you want to pronounce it, because I really, really do enjoy that side of things. I love the anatomy and all that. But for myself, sort of my own sort of, you know, I'm less likely to want to put someone in a joint lock, right, than I am to want to hit them. So why, you know, what are the strengths and weaknesses really of training joint locks in a traditional style like Kung Fu? And my point is, when we start traditional training, for example, we will always focus on sort of learning punching, learning kicking to start with. And then as you gain more skill, you will understand a bit more about anatomy, how it works and whatnot, and progress then into joint locks that, you know, will also, you know, happen when you start breaking down the forms and understanding how to apply them. What's your thoughts on that progression?
Well, okay. Well, my view is, yes, there's nothing faster than a punch, nothing faster than a, you know, poke in the eye if you're talking reality. But there is going to come a situation, and, you know, maybe you're in a pub or, you know, in an altercation with a person, and there is going to be a situation where you are going to end up trying to hold on to their arms in order to prevent them from punching you before you can get a punch in, or after you've got a punch in. If you've so any locks or holds or takedowns have to be a development from an initial grip or hold, because it's not a great idea to try to grab a free hand. if you understand what I'm saying. If he's got a free hand, it's more likely to come out and punch you. So it's better for you to be able to, protect yourself and throw that punch in, or trap it. Once you've trapped it, then you can start to consider putting any locks on.
Well,
but the thing is, though, James, the training isn't necessarily for you to learn the lock. It's for you to learn how to escape from that lock too.
Right, yes,
so there's always a counter to
Yes.
it. If there's a punch, then there's a parry against it. If there's a lock, then there must be an escape from it. So a lot of people misunderstand this. So when you go for a lock, and let's say you're in a lock, then you have to find a way of getting out of it, or not getting in it in the first place.
Right.
Which helps with sticky hands, helps that an awful lot, because
Yeah.
obviously you're touching, so people will grab you, and you'll rotate and turn and so on. But the thing I really want to leave listeners with is that if someone is throwing a punch at you and they hit you and then you try to block it, that has the same connotation as you allowing someone to grab you and putting you in a lock before you try to escape.
So you're talking about like after the fact, the
Yeah.
moment has happened. They've
Yeah.
they've grabbed you, and
You've lost your opportunity
Yeah.
to escape.
and it's like the same, just like you said, it's the same as instead of blocking that punch, you allowing that punch to hit you and then
blocking it.
it. So it's
Yeah.
like, it's the perception of it. Yeah, no, I totally understand.
But also, of course, it's an advantage if you can. But you don't have to learn this. This is just a response mechanism that you will learn as you train.
Yeah.
The second someone grips you, and that is to say that they've got their hand on your arm or wherever, but they haven't yet been able to impose any grip, any strength. That's the time that you're rotating. That's the time you're changing your anatomy. That's the time you're organizing your response.
Yeah.
Because if a good example is someone, we did discuss this before, someone grabs your wrist from the top, they intend to pull. If you turn your hand upside down, suddenly their hand is now upside down, totally in a completely different position to how they'd intended to grab you.
Right.
So you're already making a defense and a counter before you do anything else.
You're changing their anatomy.
Yeah, because we're not in the business of trying to make ourselves stronger, because you cannot do that beyond your own weight and strength and speed. If the other guy is faster or bigger and stronger, you are making him weaker by definition, because of the way you are reacting to his techniques.
So I just want to clarify something with you. So you said for every lock there is an escape or counter. Now you're not talking about escaping from a lock to put them in another lock, although you could. Yeah, but
not necessarily.
But we also have to include strikes in using strikes as escapes per se.
Of course, anything. If you can move that fast when you're escaping, which you should be able to, particularly if you change his anatomy to make it very weak for him, or changing the angle of your arm. If he's pulling you downwards and you raise your hand upwards like an uppercut, then there's an escape and a strike at the same time, as an example.
Yeah. But of course, we're not just limiting it to your arms, you're punching, you're kicking, you're biting, whatever.
Yeah, I mean, in self-defense, when we talk about self-defense, I have a policy really of trying to avoid using the legs at all costs, because most people will be frightened, scared, have no control over their legs anyway, and so they need them to step somewhere. They need them to retain their balance, because once they're down, they're down. So one of the priorities of learning self-defense is to ensure someone can, position their legs in a position of strength, shall we say, and in a position where they're capable of knowing where they can be next step. That's what Kung Fu, drills are for, and that's what the sets do, is they provide you with set movements of foot position, and so that you always it's almost like being able to see the future, where you just know when you put that foot down there, it's going to give you ultimate balance,
Right.
the best way of absorbing energy or producing energy. And when we talk about sets, we have to include the weapons, because if you are practicing weaponry, particularly heavy weaponry, you are in effect practicing the ability to step in a position where you can control that weapon and produce some kind of technique with that weapon. You know, so that to keep your adversary at bay or to attack the adversary or whatever. So you are in effect learning stance work with sets. That's what sets are retained for in a style.
Right.
And a lot of people have lost that because they thought, well, you know, we're not going to walk down the street with a tiger fork or a sword. That's not the point. It's the footwork that really does come to play in weapon forms.
Right. Sure. Well, that kind of leads us on to the next thing. What I want to do, if it's okay with you, I want to sort of, for every podcast going forward, I just want to focus on an element of the Lau Gar syllabus as we would know it. And what I want to do, because we've just mentioned sets, I want to talk about sets, more specifically the first set in Lau Gar as we practice it under in the UK under Master Jeremy Yao. I don't want you to digress too much into the other sets, because I just want to focus on the first set and basically just a bit of advice for people, what they should be thinking about when doing it, what the set means, the reasoning for it, etc., the stances, whatever, you know. So maybe you could, I'm putting you on the spot, but hey, you're a master, right? Do you hate that? Because when my lot call me Master Still, I say, don't you dare call me Master Still.
I don't like that at all.
No,
but I think it is kind of the way of the world, though, isn't it?
Totally.
And I'm in the new world. I'm in the Americas, and the biggest problem here is everyone and their grandmother is a master.
Oh God, tell me.
And I mean, I do love it here, but I have been around a lot of martial arts, and I've met some really lovely people, but I haven't yet seen what I would term as any master.
Well, I want you to hold that thought, if you don't mind, and we just go back onto the Lau sets, because I will ask you about sort of the martial arts around you, maybe in this podcast or another one. But can we just go back onto the Lau set, the first set?
Yes.
Could you just talk about it?
Go for it. It's the one I've practiced the longest.
Yeah, go on. You got to say something now.
What do I need to say? I need to.
Well, maybe the name of it, and you know, I mean, you don't obviously, right?
Well,
it's like doing ventriloquism on the radio.
Yeah, you know my Chinese, Kei Bun Sao Far, Kei Bun Sao Far, you know, whatever. And the way that you pronounce words or elongate words mean a completely different thing in Chinese. So, you know, I don't know. Forgive me if I'm saying that wrong. But basically, yes, we learned it as Kei Bun Sao Far, basic hand movement, really. And it's the form that everybody will learn once they've taken their first grade. And there's no reason why they can't learn it before that. So yeah, it consists of, well, I will categorize it as 13 moves. That's including the beginning and the ending movement. But I usually go by 12 because the beginning and the end movement is the same move, but one's done with two hands, and at the end it's done with one. Yeah.
So you're talking about the grab, which is.
Well, people. There's a thing. You see, James, is that when people do the set, if I can imagine, as I'm talking to the podcast now, and there are Lau Gar listeners, and they are beginners or anyone, and they are thinking, right, okay, he's describing the set. I'm going to do the set as he talks through it. Right. If I was to start the podcast like that, I would say, okay, the first move, no salutation particularly, just this preparation of the hands. And I always ask people that. I say, what's that? You know, the first thing they do, what's this? I demonstrate the first preparation of the hands. And they say, and from then on, of course, they assume, oh, it's a preparation or a kind of attention or whatever.
Yeah.
But people completely miss the point that preparation also has a use.
Yeah.
And I would say 90% of people who learn, or even to Black Sash point, don't know that literally is a grab. If someone has grabbed your wrist and you grab theirs and twist your hand upside down and pull it back, that is describing, that is doing exactly what we just talked about in terms of the grabs and so on, and changing people's anatomy. And so basically you're just gripping their arm, turning it upside down and bring it to you.
Yeah.
So whatever you're doing with it after that, obviously after the fact, is up to you. But in terms of learning the set first, that grab at the beginning is literally a technique, and it's done with both hands because it's simply an exercise, but it's an exercise with a use, so we call it a technical exercise. So you have physical exercise, which is press-ups and sit-ups and all that kind of thing, and then you have technical exercises.
Right. So if I can do I'm not going to explain it very well, but essentially your hands are out in front, and you're grabbing and you're pulling them back to the side of the ribs. Okay. Okay, or we can argue where they are, but they're on the side of the body, right?
Yeah. They're initially on your thighs, and then you raise them up and make a shape, grab them, pull them back. Yeah.
Okay. So why is it we return at the start of that set, and for the most part, you could argue, well, you do it in the second set as well. If you're doing the salutation on the third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, whatever, you're taking at least one fist back to the side of the body. Why do you take your fists back to the side of the body?
It's a starting point for everybody. It's like when you're learning anything, people have to start from somewhere, and pulling it back to the side of the body is the furthest most point it's going to be. Although people would argue there are a few slightly different changes of the wrist you could do to extend that or increase power. But in general, when people are learning, say for instance a basic punch, they'll punch and they'll pull one back to their waist.
Yes.
This is the it's the main or massive extension of your arm. It's the furthermost point you bring your arm back, and the punch is the furthest most point you take your arm forward. So you're basically learning the whole
range of motion.
Range of motion, yes.
But you just spoke about the punches then, and bringing your fist back to the side of your body, your waist or wherever. That's not the case in Lau, though. I mean, if we're doing punches, we retain the heart mouth. So whatever punch is not punching or in the back is covered in the centre, not on the side.
You do, but you're not taught that at the beginning. At the beginning, people are taught the full range of motion.
Yes.
But I tend to go with the intelligence of the individual that I'm teaching.
Right.
And I can explain that to them and make them practice that, but then explain to them why we start further forward.
Yeah.
And the reason we'll start further forward is obviously we're closer and we have protection.
Yeah.
This is a drill. Remember, drills have a different meaning to actual technical training. Drilling training is something that is not necessarily meant to be useful. It's meant to give you the tools to become useful.
Right.
So like a punch done in that way, from the waist all the way out, is like writing loads of A's as you're learning your alphabet.
Big A's.
Yeah, big A's. And then writing a line of B's, and then writing a line of C's. It means nothing, but it gives you the validated technical ability to repeat that action, faster and sometimes in a much shorter way.
Yeah.
So that's what basics are for. That's what drills are for.
Yeah, I mean, you always said to me that when you're practicing a form, set, kata, pattern, whatever you want to call it, you can do it either to demonstrate the form or to apply the form.
Yes.
So explain what the difference is.
Well, when we do a form, as we learn a form, we will learn it in exactly the same way we learn that punch. So everything is much larger movements. They're going from one position to the next without deviation and really without too much thought. So most movements they have an A and a B, a start point and an end point. But obviously as you develop and you become more fluid in those movements, you'll start to recognize the anatomical possibilities of each movement. So that A, B becomes A, B, C, D, E, F, G kind of thing on the way out. There are lots of ways you can utilize, and of course understand there are several ways you can make the technique work as well. Lock, block, strike, hold, throw, release, whatever. So you can, it's obviously a journey. But in the initial stages, people demonstrate the form to beginners in much bigger embossed movements. And of course that's how they will learn them. But you can always tell when someone has been teaching, and you can always tell when someone is learning, because their movements they cut out corners, not important corners. They cut out corners for speed. They create much shorter angles, if you like. They hone them. So it's one thing to cut out a corner in order to make it, to make a range or a strike or whatever. But it's another thing to cut out a corner which applies a technique. So you can't take out the technique to get faster in a form, that is, in the form sense. But you can obviously be faster by having your hands further forward, and so on.
I sometimes say it's you do it sooner rather than faster.
That's a good way of putting it. But the worst thing is when people try to do, we'll go back to the first form, for instance. They try to do the first form at speed as they get better. But it's impossible to do it at speed with the movements as big as they are.
Well, I would disagree, because I've seen it on YouTube. Jesus.
And you can't recognize a single movement in that form.
No, you can't.
And you could not apply it either. Simply because they are trying to be faster doing the same thing. That's like you trying to write a big A and a big C and a big D as a child, and then still as an adult trying to do double writing as fast as you possibly can with the same characters. It isn't going to happen. You can't do it. That's why your writing becomes smaller, because it becomes faster. But you can still read it. It's the same letter and it's still shaped the same, but it's doubled then to the B, and it's doubled then to whatever other word.
Like you said though, when people start speeding up the sets but still retaining the same large movements, what you find is they'll miss movements, add extra movements, because they're so concentrated on the speed that they do the form or the set in. They totally miss, detail.
And then they try to apply power, and in applying power like that, they suddenly realise they're adding additional directions in order to create power, backward directions. And unfortunately that just elongates so rather than becoming faster, they actually become slower in that kind of practice.
So it's quite a very short form, isn't it, that Cable and Salfar for a Kung Fu style, but it's performed in the horse stance. Why would it be performed in the horse stance?
Well, again, I guess that's the test more than anything, isn't it? A lot of, strength in stances is very important. Building strength in stances, not just the horse stance, but other stances, cross steps and, forward steps, back steps, whatever. You are, in effect, making those foot movements more secure when you do step. As we talked about self-defense just a moments earlier, we are referring to those steps that you have to perform at strength in order to be able to create energy or absorb energy.
Right.
So, having a good stance, a good posture in the first place is tantamount. It's important. It's so important.
Well, can you just explain or give some tips to the listeners on correct form during the horse stance? What are you looking for as a teacher with all your experience? What can you tell about the way someone does a horse stance incorrectly or correctly?
When you're a tall person and it's enforced upon you to try to bring your legs in tight and then sit, you'll fall over. And the simple reason is your thighs are far too long. So what you will find with a lot of Western practitioners is they will have their feet further out than their knees, and then as they sit, their knees will be over the top of their toes eventually. Ideally, your knees must be over the top of the toes, but for a very short person, that can be right in front of you.
Yeah.
As if you was halfway down a squat.
Yeah.
But with a much taller person, you're going to have a much wider gait. But the worst thing you can do is try to have a narrow gait, bend your knees, and end up with your knees buckling inwards or outwards.
Right.
Because that's just terrible. You can't do that. Your anatomy must be the decisive factor to how you are going to do your horse stance.
Right.
But to have it as in strength in any position your feet are, your knees must be over the top of your feet, over the top of your toes.
Right.
That's basically as far as the horse stance is concerned.
What about sort of you're looking at 90-degree angles on the legs? A straight posture is your arse is tucked in, your back is straight.
Yeah, you must have a good posture. Yes, of course, depending on their strength. Initially, beginners are not going to be able to do that, but you should, if possible. I mean, one of the things that we used to have to do was to sit in a horse stance, and then the instructor would come along and put a pole on your thighs, and if it rolled off, you weren't low enough. So that's a good guide for people who want to achieve a good low stance.
Yeah.
It's not going to be possible for every single individual, but it's a goal.
You see a lot of people doing the horse stance, and they're leaning forward too much.
Yeah, because they can't manage the strength on their legs. So it's better to be in a better posture, with a higher stance than it is to be in a poor posture in a low stance.
Well, one of my students, Craig, he's got injuries from when he was in Iraq, nerve damage, etc. He actually can't get into a horse stance, and he's saying, well, how am I going to pass the grade? I said, look, number one, I understand what your limitations are, but I need you to go. You call it a high horse, as low as he can go, but still retaining his comfort. Because
posture's got to be important.
Yeah.
Back straight, so that you don't want to be in a stance at any point in time where you're leaning forwards. There's two reasons for that. When you're leaning forwards, first of all, if you were punching, your arm is shorter.
Yes.
The reason that is your head is further up your arm. If you think about it, when you lean forward, your head is further up your arm.
Your shoulders further back.
Yeah, so you have a much closer proximity to the other person's technique. He's going to be able to hit you a lot. It's like saying, I'm going to, sword fencing, I'm going to hold my sword back here, where the other guy's got his sword wide out towards you. He's going to have a longer weapon. There's no doubt about that. So you do not want to be leaning forwards in a sword fight, and you do not want to be leaning forwards in any fight, because you are just closer to the target for all the wrong reasons. So that's the first thing. But obviously, secondly, they can pull you. If you're leaning forwards, they can pull you, and of course, you haven't got the same strength in your technique. So
it's a lot. Southern Shaolin styles are traditionally, they do a lot of low stances.
Yeah,
is that correct? Can you explain why?
They do. Well, it's basically Shaolin training. It's as simple as that. There is, you can describe Lau Gar as very low stances, but the story has it is that Hong was a tea merchant, and as a tea merchant, he would spend a lot of time on junks, on boats, and boats have low ceilings. and therefore he would spend a lot of time in those low stances practicing his forms.
Do you think that Ip Man spent a lot of time in the phone box? That was a bad joke at Wing Chun's expense. Who was he calling? Who was he?
Yeah, there is a saying, isn't there, that Wing Chun can fight in a phone box. Well, pretty much most kung fus can fight it. Well, any kung fu, genuine kung fu, can fight in a phone box if you're talking that close. But you do not want to be in a situation like that. You know.
Of course you don't.
So
you're not having the receiver. Give it to me.
Clunk him on the head with the earpiece.
Yeah. Oh, dear me. Oh, right. So, what was I going to say? You said there was 13 moves in the first set.
Yeah.
Now, am I right in saying, and I'd like you to elaborate as much as you can, in that the first set in Lau Gar, even though it's the shortest and by appearances the simplest of all the sets, by appearances, it is in fact the one set in Lau Gar with the most endless possibilities because of its because of the limitations in the movements as you perform it. Meaning, you're not stepping and doing moves; you're static in the spot. Do you see where I'm going with this?
Yeah, I know where you're going. I can see what you're saying. I'm not sure if I would agree that it's the one with the most movements, because obviously, as you go up the sets, you will.
All right, I won't say movements. I'd say applications.
Yeah. Well, even so, yeah, I know where you're coming from, because obviously, the more elaborate the application, the less opportunities to change those applications.
So, for example, if you're stepping and doing a movement, you limit your application of it because of the step. Whereas
I was going to say, where there are certain techniques within the higher forms that can only be applied as that technique.
Yeah.
They can be applied for different uses, but the technique, you can't deviate from the technique because it's a technique. Whereas when you've got very basic stuff, like simple movements, they're obviously easier to transfer and change. And you'll see that as you go up the sets, because the first set has, say, for instance, Jaw Dong, the hand block. But that appears in the next,
if whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, but that appears in the next form, but is then kind of it's contributed towards another movement as well.
Yes.
So it's kind of they become more elaborate as they go up the grades. So, but it doesn't mean to say that you can't use them for lots of different uses.
Yeah.
Depending on the person attacking, if he's grabbing you, etc., etc.
Yeah. So, I mean, I don't. It's hard to put it into words, isn't it, on a podcast, obviously. So what I'm kind of saying is, as soon as you start introducing elaborate moves, whether you're stepping, using the other hand at the same time or whatever, your options within the confines of that technique become limited. Not limited as to there's one way you can use this technique, but they become even more limited than if it was just a single technique done statically. Then you can start thinking, right, I could, if I combine it with a step, I can do this. If I, you've got a few more options that you can open up to.
Yeah, well, if I use the analogy of writing again, the first set is full of A and B and C and D and E, and then other sets, they might have a few joint letters, and those joint letters form small words.
Yeah. Okay.
And because they form small words, you can't really use them for anything else except for what they're meant for.
Yeah.
And I guess that's the best analogy to describe.
I to be honest, I think we should stop there, because it's like like I can imagine people going, "What the What are they on about? And I get that, I understand that, but it's you can only do so much on a podcast. But
but I mean,
it's a lot of
nice.
theory. It's a lot of theory. I think
It would be nice to think that there are black sashes out there that might sort of go, well, that's a way of looking at it, and start to look at their forms in a different sense, because it is such a sad affair that people get to black sash and then all they want to do is get to second degree, third degree and fourth degree, and they're not even thinking about their earlier stuff. And often if they're running clubs, they tend to leave the earlier stuff to their lower grades, and that's wrong.
100%.
Because you've got to, the basis to any style is that up to black sash. After that, it's just added grades. So, your style should be learnt in 12 years. The Lau style is meant to be learned in 12 years, okay? And people go, oh yeah, but I've been training it for 35 years, etc., etc. Okay, we all do. But the problem is, did you learn it within those 12 years? And have you advanced since then?
Yeah.
And a lot of people just haven't.
A lot of people just go through the motions. It's martial movement as opposed to
martial art.
And you can always tell them. And the way you find them out is just ask them a question. Ask them a question.
Yeah, you can tell whether someone knows their stuff or not. You can tell whether someone has actually taught or not. Not helped to teach. I'm talking about has developed in students to become good, martial artists.
Yeah.
So that's how you judge someone to understand their syllabus, I guess.
Yeah.
But it is a syllabus. It's meant as a tool, as a vehicle to become a martial artist. Don't think that learning your syllabus and being able to repeat your syllabus over and over again is going to make you a martial artist. It isn't. What's going to make you a martial artist is using that vehicle to become, a martial artist, to become a fighter or a technician or a very good at self-defense and so on.
What would you say? I'm glad you actually mentioned that. That was one of my questions in my show prep. I do.
You've got a show prep?
No. I just jot stuff down on a pad now and then when I'm thinking, which is all too often these days in the lockdown. The difference between people who are technicians and people who are fighters, and I use those two words specifically because you get some people who are really good fighters. For example, they've got good distance timing, they can hit you as fast as they can think about it, and then but they might not be so good at the when I say the technical side of the art, I mean understanding the movements that they're doing and the different applications and the science behind it, so the very, very, very fine detail. And then on the other hand, you've got some people who are technicians but not necessarily great fighters. Not great fighters, but not necessarily of fighting stock, so to speak.
Yeah.
What would you say about that?
The difference, well, I know there's a saying that says those that do, those that can't teach.
You talk a good fight, old man.
Yeah. So this is, obviously this is a dig, if you like, at people who teach, but they forget, of course, teachers have history too. Fighters, some fighters can be very natural and not even want to fight, but they are just natural at it when they do. And then other people, desperate to fight, have absolutely no capability or understanding of the technique, but for some reason have the tenacity that will put them forwards, and they'll be able or capable of reaching a target because then they're going to go for it. So I guess you can put it on a par to drivers. When young guys get in a car, they can be absolutely diabolically awful. Their mind is it's not developed enough to take consequences. And yet other people, can drive perfectly. Then this crazy guy who can't drive for toffee gets in a racing car, and he's bloody good. You know, it's just that's the way it is. You know, people have different mindsets.
It's like Tom Cruise in Days of Thunder, isn't it?
What do you mean?
He says, I don't know anything about cars, but I just know I can drive.
Oh, right, okay.
Never mind, you don't watch that one.
No.
Oh. Sorry,
I
go
say
ahead.
that. I say that about trucks. I have no idea. People go, "Oh, what kind of truck you got?" You know, I go, I don't know. A big one.
I just drive the shit out of it, man.
Yeah, it drives. It moves. That's it. It pulls stuff.
Where were we? What were we talking about then? Oh,
We were talking Tom Cruise.
yeah, Tom Cruise. Yeah. Oh, he's good looking, isn't he? I wish I had his. Anyway.
Yeah.
Go on.
No, as far as people who can fight are concerned, yes, it is a certain personality that does fight, and there are certain people in fighting that actually don't like to, but they do it because they can, you know, because of peer pressure, etc., etc. And then you have people who are very, very technical, who couldn't fight for toffee, but they could really you know, demonstrate, explain, and show people how to do these techniques to make them faster.
Yeah.
And then these people can go on to fight. I only hope that the people who are teaching them can encourage them to participate in sparring. The worst thing, I think, for an instructor is who maybe isn't interested in fighting at all, is to teach a martial art where there is no fighting involved, because that is a travesty. When martial arts are concerned, it's martial for a reason. Yeah. If you are teaching martial arts and there is never any fighting in, I get it. I know that there's all this litigation nowadays. Insurance costs, you know, insurance costs more if you're sparring. Insurance costs more if you're using weapons against each other, you know, and so on. But so a lot of people go, oh no, we just practice, you know, our movements, and that's it.
Yeah.
And we don't use weapons against each other. Facsimile weapons is the best they can do.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, litigation has gone a long way to destroy, you know, martial arts. Beforehand, where people would get hit, you know, you'd say sorry, that was enough. Now you have to pay them thousands of pounds in compensation, and it's just stupid. So, you know, if someone comes to a club to learn to fight, then they know that they are going to get hurt. If they go, you know, on these, we got a student who does this cycling stuff, you know, cross, what's it called when they're jumping in the air? BMX, yeah, that's it. He does that. And I tell you what, the amount of broken bones he's had, it's untrue. And why does he do it? Well, because he loves it. But it costs thousands of pounds for the NHS to fix him, and but he loves it. He's, you know, he pays his taxes. Shut up.
Yeah.
So, but it's just a thing that people do. You know, they have a notion, and they are good at what they do, and that's with fighters. And
but it's worth saying, like, there's no stigma if you're a technician and not a fighter per se. There's certainly absolutely no stigma to that. Some people might think, well, you know, I need to be a fighter, etc. But I mean, you just got to look at Gus D'Amato, Tyson's trainer, little old man. You know, do you think he could have stepped in a ring with Tyson? No, he couldn't have.
No, that's not. Well, it's the same with all of us as we get older.
Yeah, absolutely.
We you know, I've done my share of competitions and fighting and whatever, but you know, you get to fight me now, and I'm knackered.
Yeah.
You know, heavy breathing and everything.
Yeah.
I still love it, mind. I'll still do it, but it's I'm not going to last very long. Simply, I'm 60. How old am I now? 62, something like that.
Yeah.
So anyway, you stop counting after a while.
Yeah.
But there's no. You say there's no stigma to it, and I really do hope that people who teach martial arts and have any kind of understanding of fighting will encourage their students to do sparring. But you know, we did talk about this area earlier, and the fighting is diabolical.
Yeah, some people, yeah.
Oh my God! I mean, they're really nice people. They're great.
Well,
you know, they love doing their stuff. I mean,
let's just talk about some of the clubs and all the rest of it around where you are in Canada, in a place called Kelowna. I mean, what's your thoughts on the standard where you are? And go ahead. Go on.
I'm sure there are some. I haven't seen everybody, but I can guess there are some good clubs around.
You've seen a few people, though. You've seen a few.
Yeah, I've seen some good people. Yeah, I really do appreciate that. They've got amazing facilities as well, beautiful studios and so on. And then other people just operate out of a church hall, and but they've got great enthusiasm, great effort in the training and so on. But technically, I see nothing of value so far.
Right.
I argue. I have a tendency. I make friends with people and I talk to them and so on, and then I very quickly lose friendships.
Do you? You wouldn't know. It's not like we've gone on about it in any other podcasts.
No. Well, it's not that. It's just that I will speak my mind, and I will. If I don't think it works, I will say that it doesn't work. to be polite, and you watch people. When I watch a martial artist, I don't watch the whole picture. I watch the detail of what he's doing, where his hands are, what his hands are supposed to be doing, and so on. I want to give you a couple of examples, maybe. The sparring, well, forget it. It's not sparring. It's like hand blocks and kick blocks done willy-nilly.
Yeah.
But when you see someone form hand movements that are supposed to be doing one thing but are doing another, then you start to get a bit frustrated. I went to this one club, really nice guy, and I watched them do this stuff. They form in tiger's claws, okay.
Right.
And as they form the tiger's claws, I'm looking at the hand and I'm thinking, the thumb's facing in completely the wrong direction. There's no way could you make a claw and dig that thumb into anyone's, forearm or anything like that if you were grabbing them. And at the end of the class, I happened to speak to a young guy that was there, and I was a guest. So,
yeah.
And I said to him, show me your claw, and he did it exactly the same way I've just described. So I corrected him. Forgive me. I corrected him, made his thumb pointing towards his fingers, to his third finger usually.
Yeah.
And sort of demonstrated that to him, and I says, "Can you do press-ups?" And he says, "Yeah." I says, "Okay, do a press-up on your fingers." So, and then all the rest of the club started to gather around, and I said, "Do press-ups on your fingers." I said, "Now take your little finger away. Now take your next finger away. Each press up. Now take your next finger away," until he was down to his just forefinger and thumb. And I said, "Now take your forefinger away." And he did them on his thumbs. Yeah. So he was strong. Okay, he was a short, stocky guy anyway. So he was not too stocky, but he was quite short. So he had the capability to do these, push-ups without too much effort.
Yeah.
And but he did have strength in his fingers, and I said, "There you go." And he says, I've never thought of doing that before. I've never seen that before, and so on. And it's things like that I give to people that I hope will improve them. And I wasn't dissing the style. I'm not disrespecting the style. I am just simply saying what I see as a teacher is the wrong way to perform a claw.
Right.
Okay. And so I am asking him, wouldn't it be more appropriate if you were to grip someone, and I did demonstrate by gripping his forearm, wouldn't it be more appropriate when you grip someone to be digging the thumb in as opposed to pressing it to the side and not having any kind of grip?
Yeah.
And of course he understood that, so straight away I improved his technique. Now I hope it wasn't a disrespect to the teacher, but to be honest with you, it isn't, because I have more experience than that teacher.
Yeah.
And so I'm not disrespecting the teacher. I'm not disrespecting his style. I am simply helping to improve his style. Now, if he sees it as disrespect, then that's tough on him.
Yeah.
Because it just means he's not willing to learn.
Yeah.
And that's why I didn't approach him. Or although, to be fair, I did say to him, you know, that's how the claw goes. And I said, do you do a lot of grabbing? I says, tigers don't have fingers. They don't grab. So.
But well, correct me if I'm wrong. Are we talking about tiger style?
Well,
maybe not.
Yeah. Well.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
So
it is.
Yeah.
But a great club. Absolutely,
Oh,
I would recommend it to people if it wasn't for the fact that they should come to mine first.
Yeah. Well, you know,
because he's got a great attitude and he's got a great perception of. He does work well. He does the sword okay.
Yeah.
And but it's people like instructors like those people I've met, and that it isn't their fault. It's simply that they are very limited in obtaining information.
Yeah.
So they've gained a lot of information. They've trained hard. They've gained a lot of information. But after that, they're on their own, and it's very, very difficult for them to be able to take information from anyone else because they see themselves or their instructor as the main man.
Yeah.
So.
Funny enough, this does actually lead into one of my next questions I wrote down. I don't know if you can see what I got written down here, or
well, no, I haven't got the screen on.
No. So my next question was, I was gonna talk about, is it better to not put yourself in a position where you could be made a fool of to maintain the illusion of being a master? You know, so do you understand? So you give people limited information or just enough to be getting on with, because you know, if you're not very confident in your stuff, you know that if you show any chinks in your armor, you'll be exposed. So that, you know, you know, I'm not saying is it better. Obviously, it's not better, but you know, essentially, it's about sort of people latching on to. You know, so-called masters, because they're not given enough information to be able to effectively analyse what they're doing, so that they take it for granted. Do you know what I mean? Yeah,
from the point of view of the master, the guy who wants to call himself a master, is already giving him enough rope, you know, behind himself. Yeah. So it's a stupid thing to do. It's like saying, right, I've been doing it yourself for the last 10 years. I think I'm going to put myself out as a plumber. Yeah. I'm afraid you're not going to be able to do that because you just do not have the skill. No matter how good you think you are at do it yourself, you are not going to be a good plumber or electrician. So forget it, okay? Because you're going to cock it up and someone could die because of that. So, you know, it's the same with martial arts. People can injure people. Going back to my wife's class where the guy tried to put that kid out. Yeah. How stupid is that? You know. So, and other people knocking other people out just to demonstrate that their technique works. I know how to knock someone out, but I'm not going to knock someone out to prove that it works. Yeah. You know, it's been proved for you. Yeah. You don't need to do it. So, anyway, as far as to the point of view, if I had an opportunity to speak to one of these masters honestly, and they were prepared to listen, because obviously they're in denial, I would say to them, grow with your beginners. So when you have a beginner, surely you must know how to do a basic punch or a basic kick. If you don't, how dare you call yourself a martial artist, never mind a master. Yeah. So grow with your students, because develop everything and learn everything you are teaching them, because as you teach them, they will act as a sort of a template of your image, if you understand what I'm saying. Yeah. And the better you make them, the better you understand them, and therefore understand your own self. And then when you teach them something else, you do the same thing, and all the way up their grades, you're teaching them so that basically you're learning the same thing all the time. Yeah. They, of course, don't know that. They don't know that you're learning all the same time. But
I always sort of thought the way your philosophy on it was, and tell me if I'm putting words in your mouth, but it's not about how good you are. It's not about, like, if someone says, how good are you, Steve? And how can you answer that? Because whatever you say, you know, it's going to sound bullshit. So I always thought that your thoughts on it would be like, if you want to know how good I am, just look at my students, not all the. Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm not talking about the ones who are here today, gone tomorrow. I'm talking about. I'm not talking about me but I'm just saying your legacy is that of your students' capability, and if you're that good, you never need to tell people how good you are as a martial artist. They will know anyway because of the standard of the people they're creating or helping to refine or whatever.
It's true, they can see it physically in students, senior students, and also you can converse with them and ask them questions, as we do, ask them questions and educate them, because then they can judge you by other people. Unfortunately, of course, if they are a bit limited in their knowledge, they are going to go to people who are just throwing punches around and hitting pads and stuff because they think that looks better, and of course it does.
Yeah,
but it has no, quality to it. It has no depth to it. Eventually, they'll be doing that forever.
Well, you always revert back to kickboxing, and I don't mean to slag off kickboxing, but you could, just teach anyone to punch pads, and they think they're getting that fixed.
Yeah, if you've done a traditional martial art, particularly we can only talk about kung fu, and you train in traditional martial arts for years and years, and then you decide to leave. If you don't practice and develop and digest those forms and that concept, then of course you will be limited because you won't be able to teach it, and you'll end up just teaching fighting and sparring, whatever, and just kickboxing, as you say. And that's happened to a lot of very good people. I know of one in Scotland who did the same thing. Who had a great organisation, decided to leave the BKFA many years ago, and he just ended up doing kickboxing. And in his website it said, he was talking about the history, and he said, Lau, there was no substitute for fighting. Lau never practiced forms and so on. Well, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You just think to yourself, well, obviously you don't practice them. You've forgotten them. Because he was in the national squad and everything, and he was a really nice guy. I went to his house. He had a lovely cottage in next to near Loch Ness, Loch Lomond actually. Sorry.
Right.
And so he was a really nice guy. He built Scotland up before I got there. And then I was in the one side of Scotland, and then as he sort of dissipated and left the association, I ended up going to Inverness and so on.
Right.
So he a very good lesson learned is, if you don't understand your syllabus, then you will refer to kickboxing. And of course, most people don't last the length of time it requires to learn the syllabus, and therefore refer to kickboxing pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And that goes for Taekwondo as well. You've heard of Korean kickboxing.
Yeah.
And so on. So a lot of people do that. It's a shame. I did refer to an instructor a master, if they want to call it that, who has absolutely no knowledge. The only way he can actually make any benefit to himself is to be taught by his students.
Yeah.
And as far as the students are concerned, regarding, it's so difficult to discover who's a master and who isn't, but please just don't take it at face value that the guy's wearing a black belt round his waist and he looks cool, that you think that he's a master. No. Write questions down.
Yeah, but I mean, like I used that Taekwondo seminar example earlier on. I mean, the consensus is, we're going to overemphasize discipline in what we do. We're going to. It's better to be feared than loved. So you'll all stand or you'll all sit down. Nobody will ask a question. I'm going to demonstrate the techniques. Then you're going to get up and you're going to do it. And it's that lack of organic progression in martial arts, and I can use Taekwondo as an example because I've seen it. And I just think you're not creating martial artists. You're just not. with the greatest of respect. You can argue, oh, there's some good fighters in Taekwondo. All right, fine. There's some good fighters in loads of other styles, but don't confuse the fighting with the technical ability or the science and strategies and tactics of your chosen style.
Yes, fighting is an individual thing.
Right, yeah, because
when you're a teacher, you're no longer an individual.
Yeah.
And you have a lot of responsibility to make sure that you are, who you are.
Yeah.
And not who you say you are.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's always going to be a problem for martial arts, and for plumbing, and for electrician. It's always going to be a problem because by nature people are like that. Yeah. They want to be something they're not.
Yeah.
It is a very unfortunate thing, but because of the lack of general control over these things, it's impossible to stop people like that.
Yeah.
And who's going to say? And the worst thing, of course, they build up an organisation. If I say you're great and you tell me I'm great, then we respect each other and we can start an organisation.
Yeah, right.
If I turn around and say, oh, he's crap, then of course that's not going to work, is it? We're not going to have an association.
No.
So most of these organisations are full of people who come together and go, oh yeah, that's great, that's very nice. Oh, I like the way you did that. Of course, they'll go home and go, that was shit. That was.
Well. All right. Well, yeah.
That's what organisations are like. They build them up, and of course they're in it for the power and the financial reward.
Well, that doesn't. We can talk about all organisations like that. I mean, I can reel off a few, but let's just look closer to home. What about the current state of the British Kung Fu Association? Where are we with that? I mean, am I right in saying? I get the impression that the BKFA has been on the decline over the last, say, 20 years, and I certainly think the heyday of Kung Fu, so to speak, is gone in this current climate we're in now.
Mm-hmm. Well, the BKFA hasn't given that a bad rep.
No,
but in terms of,
I'm not saying the style. I'm just saying.
Oh, no. It has nothing to do with the style.
We're talking about organisations. Yeah.
Yes, organisations require, deliberation and, working together. There's an awful lot of situations that have gone on in the past which I'm not prepared really to talk about, but I can say that if an organisation in general, so I'll speak in a general term, so the worst thing is when an organisation decides to control your students, so you have an altercation or a disagreement with an instructor of yours. Either he could have done anything from steal your money, he could have done anything, he could have just simply badmouthed you, he could have tried to steal your students, whatever.
Yeah.
And then they say, okay, you haven't got the right to discipline him. We have to discipline him. So therefore, we're going to have a tribunal type of thing where we're going to listen to his side of the story, and then that guy convinces this your student convinces them, oh no, I'm not going to do this, I'm not doing that, right? And then they say, oh okay, because he hasn't done this, we can't kick him out. So likely you will then meet him running one of your stolen clubs at your organisation's courses, and have to train with him or in effect teach him. Now when that happens, very quickly professional instructors lose belief in that association very quickly. And let's face it, if that guy does it, so will the professional instructor.
Right. Yeah.
And you will lose every person who believes in that association, because they will then go, if that's happened to him, that's going to happen to me, and I'm not going to let it happen. So therefore they pull away, and they may stay loyal to the association or to the style, but they very quickly will pull away any control or that the association may have had on them. They will pull away,
Yeah.
and they will not conform to anything, and they won't give themselves to it either. They've got to make a living.
Yeah.
They gave their jobs up specifically dedicated to their passion, and that passion put them where they are, right? And now they're not going to lose that, and they're not going to lose their income for no one sitting on a panel.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So that is the kind of thing that happens, and I'm not going to say, which association that is, but people can take their own, opinions.
Yeah. The business of martial arts in many ways has detracted from the quality. Now, I think that one of the finest martial art businesses out there, without a doubt, is Taekwondo. Without
Absolutely.
a doubt. Because it's just, it is a businessman's,
It was devised as a
dream.
business, James.
Yeah.
It was devised as a business when it came to America.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's, but yes, they have an excellent business model. And, but the thing is, you see, it's important. Business is important. It's not about greed. It's not about, even power. It's about developing your style. And without money and the finances to develop a style,
You can't.
You can't run a country without taxes.
Yeah, sure,
it's as simple as that.
Yeah.
And so there's no way on earth that you can build a big organisation unless they're all independent, and and don't forget, they're all independent, but they're all going, oh yeah, you're good, I want to be associated with you.
Yes,
and then
yeah.
they have to say that you're good,
Yeah.
otherwise it ain't an association.
Yeah.
So that's not the way to run an association. If you want a good style and you want that style to prevail, and let's face it, it's all about the style. You can't. When I built Scotland, I didn't think about the money. I didn't develop, but obviously it was financially viable. So I developed Scotland, and as I developed Scotland, it got bigger, more and more people. But unfortunately, I was of the mind, well, I'm not that worried about money, so I was giving the instructors money, and I was giving the association money, of course, and and then that's when people turn around and kind of start to dissipate and make it their own, and you get all sorts of problems. So you've got to have a controlling figure.
Well, this is it. Like you look at, I use Taekwondo as an example, but you look at the control and the control they have over their students, which in turn are essentially their business partners, whether they're running franchises or whatever.
Yeah.
And the reason they have this control on them is because in that organisation, they will call you master. You will have recognition across the whole board. So you feel that that pull towards this organization, because you're important there. And like you said, when you've got other people telling you you're great, oh yeah, you're brilliant, yeah, come down, do a course, teach us some DIMAC techniques, and yeah, well, it's true, you're amazing. They're not going to want to go anywhere. They're going to want to stay where they are, and they're going to want to perpetuate their philosophy on their own version of teaching. It might not be very good, but they're still, they're not going to give that up, Steve.
No, of course not. People want to be masters. That's
People
that's
want,
the thing.
that's it. People want it.
Yeah, it's the way of the world, and it's such a shame.
Yeah.
But if you are going to build an organisation, the only, in summary, you need a financial base.
Yeah.
And you need a discipline base. You need control. And if you don't have that control, then you're nothing.
Yeah.
But most importantly of all, you have to respect your people, because if you don't respect them and you don't give them their ability to develop, then you will lose them anyway.
Yeah.
Right? You will lose them because that you've got to give people respect. If you expect respect, you've got to get respect off them.
Right.
And yes, you'll always have people who will just disrespect you and betray you and so on. You'll always have them. But I think, genuine people who are interested in the money, they're not interested in the money, I should say, but they're not teaching. And then suddenly they start to teach. The first thing they say, you say, okay, so this is how the club works. So you're going to teach this club, blah blah blah, and I'm going to, pay you X amount or percentage or whatever. And the first thing they do say, oh, I'm not interested in money. I just love teaching. I just want to teach. It's those same people.
Yeah.
Some of those same people who then are going, oh, they're taking all the money.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's exactly the same people.
Yeah.
But it is really amazing.
Yeah, and and just to round this off, because I don't want to talk about the business side too much now, but just to round off this point, it's those same people who would begrudge, someone else making money, or their teacher or paying their dues or whatever. Then they'll leave the association, go off and start their own gym, and end up having to take the money anyway. And it's like, you hated the idea of being a businessman so much, so you left in order to be a businessman yourself. And it's like, okay, fine, but
because you can't survive without the business.
And listen, I'm not saying people don't got to eat. I'm just saying they've got to be what's good enough for the goose is good enough for the gander, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it's kind of interesting that
but it shouldn't affect the style, though. That's the trouble.
No,
and it does.
But it does affect it because you've got a fragmentation.
It destroys it. Yes, it destroys the style. It destroys the whole organisation, the whole ability to of power, if you like. Because don't forget, you're not the only cookie in the jar.
Yeah.
You are an association amongst thousands of other associations. And if you, as an example, you get a lot of fighters, for instance, who, without your, say so, without consulting you, they'll just go out and start fighting in other people's organisations, and therefore they'll start paying other people their hard-earned cash so that they can fight in a competition, and it builds the prestige of their competitions. You can't afford to run a competition, because they all go into everyone else's, and they're going, oh, but these are great competitions. Well, wait a minute. I've got a picture which I'm going to stick on YouTube on my page. We were looking through our photographs yesterday. I found some pictures of old students, and I also found some pictures of my very first competition in Scotland.
Right.
And it's just a display of all the trophies and the shields and stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm going to put that on my Kung Fu Canada Facebook. Yeah.
Oh, right.
Because it's a great picture.
Yeah.
Just reminded me of my very first open competition in Scotland.
How many people did you have?
Oh God, it was packed. There was loads. It was big. Well, you'll see by the trophies.
Yeah.
But it was absolutely amazing. I loved it.
Yeah.
So I've run awful lot of competitions, and been a referee for many years.
Yeah, sure.
And an organizer of competitions, and obviously of clubs. And there's nothing like the satisfaction of seeing people come together, and a great skills of people's whatever style, and it kind of gives you the opportunity to judge your style against other people, and it is fantastic to watch.
Yeah. Well, I tell you what, that was we flowed, then we went a bit heavy, but we've got to peter out now and say goodbye to everybody, Steve.
Okay.
Guys, thank you so much for joining us on another episode of the Kung Fu Podcast. The next one will be number 10. Wow, 10 already.
Wow. Shall we hold some celebrations?
Well, yes, I think so. Well, we are. So this is 999. Because you mentioned Adolf Hitler last week, and I just I haven't got him out of my head. Anyway, guys, thanks again for joining us on the Kung Fu Podcast. My name's James Still, and as ever, I'm joined by my teacher, Mr. Steve Newby. Take care, guys. Bye-bye.
Bye.
I kick your little Beijing ass right now, man. I ain't scared of you. I know you know that little tricky shit. Come on.
Hi guys, thanks so much for joining us on the Kung Fu Podcast. If you like that and you want to find out more about us, you can head over to Facebook, Twitter, Instagram or YouTube and find us under SJN Martial Arts. And also guys, this podcast is available on Podbean and iTunes. So until next time, take care of yourselves and we'll see you again on the Kung Fu Podcast.
Now, why doesn't somebody pull off 45 and bang, settle it? No guns.